Can we agree that it's hard to know where you're going if you don't know where you are right now? Hard to know where you're going if you don't know where you are right now. So, my oldest daughter is driving. That's relatively new. She's been driving for about 6 months. And, if she were to call me and say, I need help getting home or I need help getting to my friend's house, what's the first thing I would have to ask her? I'd have to ask her, well, where are you right now? Now, fortunately, we've got these apps on the phone that like I can see where she is at all times. And I'm sure they hate that. But if you don't know where you are, it's really hard to know where to go to get to where you want to go. We want to talk about today how to know when you're at the starting line, when it's time to start your podcast. So we want to talk about how to know when you're at the starting line. And I'm occasionally going to be looking up, cheating a little bit, and I have kind of an outline for this up on the wall in front of me. And so I'm going to be referring back to that. So how do you know if you're at the starting line? So one thing that I've figured out in the past little bit is that we here at Market Street Media have gotten pretty good at diagnosing where you are in your life cycle if you're a podcaster. So if you're, at the very, very beginning, or if you're a very mature podcaster, there's a few stages in between, and we've come up with a few steps and a couple milestones that we can identify for each stage to tell where you are on that spectrum. The only stage that we're going to be looking at today is the very, very beginning. We're not going to focus on anything else. We can focus on that another time. And if that's something that you want to know about, by all means, tell us, raise your hand. But we're going to focus on the very, very beginning. So we're going to look at 7 signals that can tell you when, hey, it may be time to hit the green light on starting that podcast. Okay, so let's do that. This is for, again, people who are who want to start a podcast, for people who, maybe there's somebody who's telling you should start a podcast. Maybe, your wife or a friend or spouse, husband, partner, whoever has been telling you, you really ought to do that. Like, I think that'd be a good outlet for you. Or maybe somebody inside your small business has been saying, we should start a podcast. I don't know anything about it, but if we're going to do that, would you take it and run with it? You should start it. We're talking to you. If you've been itching to do something new, if you don't have time for video or blogging, because video, it can be a big time suck, in the sense that if you want your video to turn out well, you want to put some time into editing it. And usually for every minute that you put into creating a video or video that you want to, publish, you've got 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes behind the scenes to make that 1 minute of video happen. So video can be time consuming. Not everybody feels comfortable blogging because, sometimes we get in our heads about writing, and we kind of trick ourselves into thinking that we can't write. And so blogging isn't for everybody. If you have a message to share with the world, if you're a great storyteller, or if you are like a really funny person, maybe see things in a way that's a little bit different than everybody else, or if you want to help other people, starting a podcast may be for you, and we're talking to you today. We're not necessarily talking to established podcasters or people who think that podcasting is, a passing fad, or, some kind of fleeting thing, or that it's just dumb or boring. That's this is not the Facebook Live for you. So, or also, if you give up easily, like this isn't for you. Podcasting, it takes some effort, it takes some commitment to have a show that your listeners will love and that you'll love doing. Okay, so here's what we tend to find people have in common when they're like coming up to the starting line, when they are kind of in that stage of they're starting to think about, what if I had my own show? Or maybe they've done a little research. So we call that stage pod curious. Like, you are pod curious if you haven't yet started your podcast, but you're thinking, well, maybe this is something I ought to try. Maybe I ought to do this and see if this works. Or maybe this is something that would be a great outlet or expression tool for me. So you're what we call pod curious. All right. Here are some traits of people who are pod curious. So you're probably what we call like a casual podcast listener. So listening to podcasts is a thing that you like to do. You do it occasionally, and the podcasts that you listen to are probably things that you've come across the larger shows. You probably have a few favorite podcasts, like you've got your go-to, like I never miss this when it comes out. And so you've subscribed to a few of those in a podcast player. Maybe you daydream about having your own podcast. So you can kind of picture yourself sitting behind a mic, talking to an audience and publishing that, posting that, and then, seeing what happens with that after the fact. You're probably active on social media. And so you're used to putting things out there for other people to see and interact with, and that is, either entertaining or educational to other people in some way. Let's see what else. You've probably researched how to start a podcast. Like, you probably Googled that. You've probably watched a YouTube video or two. You may have explored podcast hosting services and some of the things you have to have done to start a podcast. Let's see what else. You may have shared with other people that you want to start a podcast. So again, I'm just running through traits of people who are, approaching the starting line for starting their own podcast. The other thing is that you may feel overwhelmed by the process. You may look at all the things that have to be done, or, equipment, software. What do I say? And it's easy to get overwhelmed in that stage. Okay. So let's just run through the 7 signals here. And if you're saying yes to a lot of these 7 signals, you're pretty close to the starting line. Like, it may be time to start thinking about, what's my plan for getting my show started? Okay. 7 signals. Number 1, do you listen to podcasts? Like, are you a podcast fan? Is it a part of your, whatever you want to call it, your entertainment diet, your education diet? Are you a person who listens to podcasts? If you are, that may be a signal that podcasting is for you. If you don't listen to podcasts, it's going to be kind of it's going to be a weird place for you to hang out behind the mic if you're on a podcast, if you're not just a fan of the medium itself. Number 2, are you subscribed to 3 or more shows? And this is where we're looking for that kind of deeper fandom, like what you like in a podcast. You're committed and you keep coming back to a few episodes. I think when you do that, you're more likely to know which direction you want to go with your own show, if that has been informed by some other shows that you enjoy. So that's number 2. Are you subscribed to a few shows? So there's a listener, there's subscriber, and you're just kind of moving to a deeper level of engagement. All right. Number 3, have you daydreamed about having your own podcast? I mean, I did for a long time, like years and years and years, like longer than 5 years. I daydreamed about being able to sit behind a mic and talk to people and share ideas that were on my mind. I had no idea exactly what I wanted to share with people. It took me a while to figure that out. And I kind of scratched around and had a few, I wouldn't call them false starts, because I definitely learned, but I tried it a few times and it didn't work for me. And now I've found a format that works for me. So have you daydreamed about having your own podcast? If you have, you're getting closer to the starting line. And when I say daydream, I mean, like, have you pictured where you might sit and record, or who you might talk to, or what you might talk about? Title, description, format, things like that. So have you daydreamed about it? Number 4, the 4th signal, I would say that it may be time to start thinking about starting your podcast is are you active on social media? So not just a consumer of social media. You're sure you scroll and you like, but are you posting things on social media for other people to see and consume and interact with? Because podcasting is putting yourself out there, even if it's a on a topic that's not necessarily personal. So if you have a business podcast where you're sharing marketing ideas or leadership ideas, that's not necessarily super personal, but it's still, you're taking something and you're sharing it with the world, and then the world can do with it whatever they want. So that takes some guts. It takes some creative energy, and it takes some guts to put stuff out there. Social media is a great training ground for that sort of thing, for building up those guts, building up that creative energy and refining that creative muscle of just saying, hey, here's a picture I took today. Here's what it made me think about, or whatever, or, sharing something that you think, a funny thought that crossed your mind, sharing that on Facebook or Twitter or wherever. That's just a good exercise to get into. It will kind of train those muscles, like I said. Okay, so are you not only a consumer of social media, but are you active? Are you creating content? If you are, if that's a regular part of your habits and daily life, then it may be, you're probably getting close to the starting line for starting your podcast. Number 5, have you researched starting a podcast? Have you looked at YouTube videos and blog posts and checked out our site? We have lots of resources for you. Have you kind of dug your hands into what it takes to actually start a podcast in terms of format and what am I going to talk about? And what's an ideal show length and some of those common questions that people ask. Where should I post it and how should I get it in front of people? Have you researched some of those things? Doesn't mean you have to have answers to those things or no answers to all the questions that you have, but just the fact that you may be out there Googling, YouTubing, sniffing around for information, that's a good sign that you're getting close to the starting line for starting your own podcast. Number 6, have you shared with other people that you want to start a podcast? So I probably didn't do this for a while just because I thought, well, if I fall on my face and I haven't told anybody, then, no harm, no foul, right? But I think it is a good indicator if there's somebody in your life who's close to you, knows what you're interested in, knows what you're passionate about, that you have said, I'd really love to start a podcast. Like that's something that's just a goal for me. It feels like something that I need to do. If you have shared that with somebody else, then I'd say you're pretty close. So have you shared the fact that you want to start a podcast with someone else? That's probably a good signal that it's time to take a step forward. And then number 7, the 7th signal that it may be time to start your podcast is, do you feel overwhelmed when you think about starting? Do you feel overwhelmed when you think about starting? Again, very common. You don't have to resolve or solve that feeling of overwhelm. It's normal, but it may be telling you that it may be telling you that it's time to get started. It's a discussion for another day about why our brain kind of overwhelms us. But when you're on the cusp of doing something new, doing something creative, doing something that feels maybe a little bit risky to you, our mind has a way of coming in and saying, whoa, let's stay safe. It's better if we play small instead of, taking the risk and clicking publish on a podcast and taking a message out to the world. So those are the 7 signals. If you're checking a lot of those boxes, here's what I'll tell you. Every podcaster from every podcast that you've listened to has been exactly where you are right now. So if we went through those 7 signals and you were saying, if you hit all 7, or if you hit, a handful of those things, every single podcaster has been exactly where you are. Nobody just jumps behind a mic and feels perfectly at home the first time or the first 5 times or first 10 times. Everybody has felt overwhelmed, doesn't know where to start, doesn't know the technology, how to make it all happen. Everybody's felt overwhelmed. I've been there. The other hosts on the Market Street Media platform network have been there, and we're working through it. Here's the next step for you, though. We're building a course that will take you from, I feel like I probably need to approach the starting line. I'm getting pretty close to the starting line. A course that will take you from there to having your first episode published. It is a step-by-step walkthrough of everything you need to do to start a podcast. Now, it's not ready yet, so there's nothing for you to go see or do right now, except that right here, I will drop this in the comments. I think I can do this. Hang on. So I just dropped a page in the comments that if you think that something like that would be helpful to you, you can just file your email address with us. And when we get that rolled out, it'll take us a couple of weeks to get that rolled out. But when we get that rolled out, we'll let you know, and you can take a look and see if that's right for you. So if a short, highly actionable course to help you go from, I think I'm getting close to the starting line, to, hey, I'm started. Now, I don't know all the rest of the steps, but I've thought through how to get started, and I've worked through these steps, and now I have a podcast created. So that first initial step, we want to help you with that. Also, I'm putting together a list. I have a list of specific action items that you can take right now to take a step forward from being pod curious to being what we call like committed to your podcast. So you've gone from I'm just curious, I'm learning, I'm excited, to, okay, I'm going to do this. Here are a few, I've got some action steps that I can send you that will show you, okay, if I do this, 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 and this, I'm going to be much, much closer to my goals. So if you want that, just type action steps in the comments. Just comment action steps, and I will shoot those to you. Okay, action steps in the comments if you want the list of action steps to get from pod curious to committed and just over the hump to starting your podcast. Okay. So we're almost ready to unwrap that course and let you have a look, but just hit that link that I dropped and we will email you when it's ready. So that's it for what I had planned for today. Really just humbled and honored that you popped in to check this out.